You won't believe this Labour government document. I've got it here in my hands. What do you think of this? Your kids spied on for Islamophobia in school, control over what news channels you watch, told you must adapt to immigrants' way of life. Flying the national flag is right-wing extremism, and a brand new Islamophobia czar enforcing some of it. This is Labour's new social cohesion strategy. Trust me, I've read it all. Let me talk you through it. Top of the list.
Mosques, schools and businesses have been attacked. Women harassed. Families are living in fear. We have a duty to act, but you can't tackle a problem if you can't describe it. So today we are adopting a non-statutory definition of anti-Muslim hostility. This gives a clear explanation of unacceptable prejudice, discrimination and hatred targeting Muslims so we can take action to stop it.
Right, so first up, they're appointing a special representative on anti-Muslim hostility to, quote, champion efforts across the UK to tackle hostility and hatred directed at Muslims and those perceived to be Muslim. Note the choice of words there, perceived to be Muslim. Does that remind you of any much talked about definitions, perhaps? This new czar could, in my opinion, bully people and organisations into silence, finding hostility in every honest debate, just like Canada's failed version that smeared Trojan horse reports as Islamophobic. I'm sure that's going to go down really well. They also will be adopting a non-statutory definition of anti-Muslim hostility as a, quote, a tool for government and organisations to better understand, measure, prevent and address it. They're urging schools, colleges, councils, the NHS, every single public body to monitor and report anything that could be labelled anti-Muslim under this expansive framing. What about integration, I hear you ask? Well, they're calling it a two-way street. To me, that implies Indigenous Brits must adapt to migrants' way of life too. And why? Why should British people have to adapt their well-established way of life to accommodate foreigners who you have had at least assumed moved to the UK for their love of our way of life, our values and our country? Why aren't they just integrating with us? Why has there got to be this two-way street? The report also slams summer's displays of national flags as the misuse, quote, of national symbols to exclude or intimidate, claiming the extreme right turns symbols of pride into tools of hate. But there's no mention of the actual hate marchers and their flags. Remember, they're marching through the capital. And imagine thinking this, that raising our national flag is a right-wing extremist thing to do. It really is incredible stuff. The report also states this, I quote, the ease with which peoples of different cultures and races live side by side in our diverse democracy is both envied and feared around the globe. Well, all I'll say to that is, how do you think it's going in Birmingham or Leeds, perhaps? And here's what it says about our ethnicity and identity of being English. And it's interesting because there's a lot of debate about this online. It states that leaders should promote a confident, modern patriotism, especially since, as they say, recent failures have allowed the far right to link English identity to being white or Christian, exploiting it as a racial or religious construct that most people reject. They also want to crack down on what they're calling divisive content. And quotes, they want to do this, create secure online spaces in what I think is a blatant and unabashed attack on free speech. Who gets to decide what's divisive, by the way, and what isn't? Is it Keir Starmer or David Lammy or Ed Miliband? It leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Then there's the push for making trusted news sources more prominent, particularly during crises. Their idea is to boost what they call trustworthy outlets during events like riots or unrest. I wonder who they might be having a little jab at here. Might it be Britain's #1 news channel, perhaps? Well, look, there is some good news in this report. They finally admit Islamism is the biggest threat to Britain, making up 3/4 of counter-terror caseloads and 94% of terrorist deaths in the last 25 years. These new powers will be delivered to shut down extremist charities, block hate preachers and oversee homeschooling. And it will stand against blasphemy intimidation, they claim. Of course, you all remember the famous case of the Batley schoolteacher. In summary, this so-called social cohesion strategy, this rubbish, is nothing but a tyrannical blueprint for Labour's dystopian Britain, eroding freedoms, vilifying acts of national pride, enforcing thought police on kids and adults alike, and, of course, pandering to the far-left ideologies while betraying the very essence of British identity. Worst of all, it creates new Islamophobia weaponry to shut down criticism of the religion and anyone else who might look like they're Muslim, which is frankly insane. I'm sick of it. Labour has learnt nothing from the grooming gang epidemic that they oversaw, and successive governments as well, of course. And it seems to me they're willing for it to happen all over again.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private Internet Access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GBNews discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GBNews to start protecting yourself digitally today.
Do you get the thoughts of my panel on this one? Conservative MP for Tatton, Esther McVeigh, political commentator, Will Kingston is here, and of course, broadcaster and journalist Jonathan Liss. Esther, I'll start with you. We've been talking about the anti-Muslim hostility part of this policy that's come out, this strategy, they're calling it. They love this strategy stuff, don't they, this government, weird. When you dig into it, there's a lot of underlying thought and opinion, what I would call it, in this strategy. It's not exactly fair. It takes a lot of what I would say left-wing opinion and puts it into delivery. But the hostility part of this stuff is the anti-Muslim hostility stuff is quite concerning. Schools will be monitored. Kids will perhaps be under some sort of government list if they say something out of step, perhaps.
I think you're right to be concerned. I know I'm concerned about this. People are talking about shutting down free speech, the introduction of a blasphemy law via the back door. They called it a non-statutory definition, but we always should remember that non-crime hate incidents came that way as well, and the problems those cause, the two-tier Kia. And I was in Parliament when this was brought forward yesterday, squeezed into a very short space of time. And the title of this was Protecting What Matters. Didn't actually say what it was talking about. Government's plans for social cohesion. Britain has faced global crises and we've got through them. We must stand together. People who want to sow division on the streets, neighbourhoods and in our minds. I mean, this was absolute nonsense, sort of apocalyptic sort of expressions for what they were talking about. And I think it is sinister. We've got two-tier here, and And you're right, it is closing down debate, closing down asking about things, questioning about Islam. Islam is a belief, right? You're allowed to question beliefs. This isn't about racism, because there's laws for that anyway. This is about beliefs. And my concern is the Labour government has wanted to do nothing about the rape gang inquiry for fear of the Muslim vote. Nothing about Sharia courts. I want compulsory labelling of halal and kosher meat, from which it shies away. So this is what it's about, and it is pandering to the Muslim vote, and it's come out now because it was absolutely hammered at the by-election the other week, and this has been rushed through the House to try and appease those Muslim voters, and it is not thought through, and anything that goes on for pages and pages and pages is bad law.
I certainly agree with that. It was a lengthy document. Jonathan, I think that the problem people have got with this is that you'll speak to many Muslims, they'll go, we don't want this stuff. This is creating more division in the country. It's saying you need special treatment. And how do you define someone who looks Muslim? It's a belief.
Well, first of all, I don't think that you have to look at where this has come from. Which is a 73% rise in Islamophobic incidents in 2024. I don't know why that is so funny to you, Will. It's not funny if you're a Muslim who's been attacked because you're Muslim, in the same way that it's not funny when people are being attacked for anything. I find your attitude to this completely extraordinary. But anyway, we'll come to that. We'll come to that in a minute. Esther, I also think it's pretty abhorrent, and I like you very much, but I think it's pretty abhorrent to use the phrase pandering to the Muslim vote. If you would substitute the word...
That is what Labour's doing.
If you would substitute the word Jewish for that, it would sound pretty awful, pandering to the Jewish vote. By dealing with anti-Semitism or by addressing policies that are important to Jewish people. There's nothing wrong with addressing the concern with Muslim people.
I'm afraid Labour knows that it is losing a lot of that vote. They've got people in the cabinet about to lose the state. Angela Rayner, West Streeting. They lost the Gorton and Denton by-election, and that is why they are absolutely panicking and why it's come out now. And by the way, when you talk about the rise in sort of Muslim attacks, the attacks against the Jewish community has gone up tenfold in comparison. So just so we get that right.
Absolutely, and that's why we need to take anti-Semitism very, very seriously in this country. But I don't think that Islamophobia, they're not opposed to each other. It's not a zero-sum game. We have to take both of these hatreds seriously. The government needs to have a strategy to deal with it.
But there is a racism law.
Let me bring Will in, because there's so much more than just the anti-Muslim hostility stuff that they're talking about here, Will. They said they mentioned things like flag flying, which is, they say, an act of right-wing extremism has been used as a tool of hate, indeed. Many other elements of this strategy are littered with opinion, not actual policy or fact.
That's right. To Jonathan's question as to why I find this funny, it is because the word Islamophobia should only ever be met with mockery. It's a stupid word. The word itself doesn't even make sense.
Outrageous.
And it is only a way to shut down legitimate criticism of Islam. Now, to your point, this is the government taking hundreds of pages to admit that multiculturalism doesn't work. They could have saved a lot of time and money by just admitting that. And make no mistake, this is a confession. It's not a strategy document, and they are doing what every government of a multicultural society does, which is shutting down free speech, which is controlling the media, and which is indoctrinating people. And you know what's particularly galling about this? It is the indoctrination of children and the attempts to ask schools to try and look at kids and see their behaviour, to see what they are saying, and to try and put them into a particular type of thought. That's what I think is just so awful about this.
The monitoring stuff is absolutely terrifying, and this new czar is going to get a ton of money and a ton of weaponry. We've seen this fail in Canada, Esther, where essentially the whole thing got scrapped because the czar was constantly calling everything Islamophobic, and therefore good reports and good debate around blasphemy, for example, and around criticism of Islam was getting shut down, and it failed in the end. Why is the government replicating this? Why does it feel the need to have a strategy when actually we have pretty good laws to protect people of all races, religions and otherwise from hatred?
I think it's a failing government. I think it's floundering. It doesn't know what to do. And I will go back to the fact that it is trying to get its Muslim vote out, so it's trying to come forward with this. But what we can't have is people walking on eggshells when they want to raise legitimate concerns. So it could be something about honour killings. It could be about first cousin marriages. It could be about anything which is a legitimate concern. And we've seen this in the past now. Police feel they haven't been able to raise legitimate points. Medical institutes haven't. Schools and universities haven't. And it's the wrong way to go. We want a free society, free speech, and being able to raise issues of genuine concern.
And if you think that this won't be weaponised by the government for their own ideological purposes, just look at the way that non-crime hate incidents have been used as a way to chill speech.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think the concern for most people have, and I've spoken to Muslims about this as well. They're not.
Well, Muslims aren't a monolith, Alex.
No, but
they're all individual people who might have different views.
I mean, the government can't even define it, right? They want to define this category, and they've actually said people who look like Muslims are part of this category as well.
People who are perceived to be Muslim.
I could be a Muslim, Jonathan.
Alex,
hang on, let's address this. It's really important. It's really important.
You could be, and if I were to racially abuse you or physically attack you because I thought you're Muslim, then yes, that would be an Islamophobic incident, even if you weren't Muslim. I don't know why that is so difficult to understand.
Basically, it's making it.
It's all racially motivated hate.
But that's already a crime. If you did a racial attack, if you did a physical attack, if you did any of that, it would already be a crime. So that's why it's unnecessary.
So, Jonathan, I need to hear from you on this because it begs the question, why do we need to do these things? Are we not just actually creating more division by having these things in place which are going to actually raise issues? You know, back in the early 2000s, Jonathan, people didn't talk about race. They didn't talk about religion.
Of course they did, Alex.
No, they didn't. This was
yes,
a much
they did.
more harmonious
And by the way,
all the crazy leftists started making
absolute
political
nonsense.
identity.
And by the way, I just have to I find it so completely absurd, the idea that we are treading on eggshells around Muslims in this country. Muslims are the most vilified group in British society. People are attacking them all the time and have been for years. The Muslims are the people that it's legitimate to obviously bomb them off the face of the earth in other countries when we participate in that sort of quite gladly. Fortunately, not particularly in this latest
we're at
batch
war
of
with
Muslim
Putin
killing.
as well, by the way. Our bombs are killing white people in Russia. It's not war, isn't it?
They're not in Iran.
Discriminate.
Look, we know that through Britain's foreign policy over many, many decades, the Muslims feel that they are fair game, that they are being targeted around the world. And in this country, there's been, as Saeed Awasi said many years ago, that Islamophobia passed the dinner party test, where it's legitimate at a middle-class dinner party to talk about how much you dislike Muslims. And I hear it all the time. People coming up to me after the 7th of October, for example, people saying, "Oh, those Muslims," people thinking that because I'm Jewish, I would somehow accept that.
Something like, is it 20 per 100,000 attacks on Muslims, and it's something like 120 for Jewish out of 100,000. So you keep giving it because you keep talking about.
I'm not saying that they're not mutually exclusive.
You get your figures wrong.
Run out of time, unfortunately. Sorry.